So my name is Dr. Helma DeVries Jordan. I'm the chair of the Division of Behavioral and Social Sciences, and I'm an out faculty member, and I do research about LGBTQ movements and the marriage equality movement as well. And it's my pleasure to say welcome to all of you today, especially at the start of fall break. It's really great to see how many students are here. It's really heartwarming. Your presence, just says something about our campus and what community people want to create on this campus. I thought about what to say. I always try to have a theme to introduce the event and get us going, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about coming out. I think sometimes people take coming out for granted. They think, oh, in today's society, it's so easy. It still isn't for many people, and it depends on who you're talking to. And sometimes the first conversation you have is a hard one. I know with my parents, the first conversation was very difficult and involved especially my dad saying, this is just a phase. You're going to do harm to your future children if you have children. And it was very painful. But in his case, it was really amazing to see over a decade time span, the turnaround in his life, even at the end of his life. I brought this picture. It's very special to me. It was when he came to first meet my son. And if you see the love and joy he had looking at my little guy, he was able to come to accept me and my love for my wife and to love our child. And we named our second-born. Her middle name is after him because he wasn't alive to meet her. But it gives me a lot of joy that he was able to end his life that way. And it wasn't an easy journey. And I was thinking about the importance of allies as well, because when I came out to my parents, I was in grad school. I tried coming out in high school and was kind of turned down. So I tried again in grad school. It took time. And for some people, they come out, when they're children. Some people come out when they're senior citizens, it's varied. But yeah, the second time I tried coming out, I had a friend who drove with me from Maryland to New Jersey. And that was not an easy trip to be present for, A lot of hard conversations, a lot of tears. But she came, she was there with me, and she provided levity. We joked about silly things, and we stayed up late talking after those hard conversations with my parents. And it meant so much to me to have support in that, And so I think it's important that we celebrate today as a day that people come out for who they are on their own terms, not that they're forced out, because that's never cool, right? It's not cool to, and I always remind people about this, because now someone's like, oh, is that person gay? Is that person trans? No, you have to let them come out to who they want to on their own terms. But, people don't realize the implications of outing people, right? And I just want to remind people about that. But anyway, the allies are also really important. Your support through that process. You don't have to say the right thing. Just being there, being supportive, that means the world to us, right? And so on this day, I'd like to celebrate that. I also just want to celebrate my family because, we're able to be a rainbow family. We're supported by all those around us, and it means everything to me. It's not like primary part of my identity, but the fact that people just see our love for one another for what it is, both our neighbors, our community, our child's school, it means the world to me. And the world has changed a lot in the last decade, And to be able to live that life means a lot to me. So on that note, we're going to have several speakers today sharing their own experiences. And at the end, we're going to have, the last speaker is an alumnus. So, and some of you heard him speak yesterday, Miles, so that's exciting. And then we're going to be doing a march to the Panther statue for a photo shoot. We'll have some snacks here. We encourage people to mingle and chat. Come back to the chapel if you'd like to do that. And thank you. Okay.
I had to check. Good afternoon, everybody. I have to admit that when I come up to talk on a day like today, my heart is still pounding because I spent so long doing everything I could to not have to talk about this. And if you were here last year, I shared very personally, I had no notes. I have notes this year. But I shared last year my own personal story. And I will say, I'm an open book. If there's anybody who wants to talk to me about my journey, I'm happy to share that with you. But I just feel like there was something in the wavelengths, because I also brought photos to share. And because to me, photos are often, we can see so much in a photo. I can look at photos from the past and see and know and feel what I was feeling at that time, and I can look at photos of now and I can and in the past and see joy, and see what I was feeling and how I was living into who I was. So as I was thinking about today and thinking about coming out, I did want to prepare a little bit something more of an encouragement. And as I've reflected on coming out, and I'm using that term sort of maybe more broadly as a term that you could use to say unapologetically living as your authentic self, whether that's as a member of the LGBTQ community or if that is as an ally or in general as human beings living into our existence and who we are. But for us in the LGBTQ community, it means it means something wholly different. And I think it's important to recognize the alternative of that, that coming out. We are coming out of something. And for some of you, it might be a closet. It might be a box. It might be an identity that you feel you've buried in a drawer somewhere. And coming out and living into that is really something special. For me, that was a life of fear and anxiety and repressed emotions and repressed desires. I spent much of my life in the closet and in that fear and anxiety column, well into the point where I was nearly 30 years old, which is now further away than it. Anyway. But something within me knew at a time then that it was what I needed to do. That living in that state, I could no longer be really who I was supposed to be. And so what I often tell people, and maybe similarly to what Helmut just said, there were times that I feel like I stuck my foot out of the closet, you know. Or maybe I built a window or something, and how often that led to me going right back in. But I do want to share. I want to share one photo that I hope is relatable to some people because it's from when I was a freshman in college, and when at one of those points where I had sort of stepped out, and I was able to really kind of experience life as who I really thought Michael was and who I really knew myself to be. And so that is a photo from a football game at TCU my freshman year of me and my best friend at the time. It was my boyfriend. I don't know if you got that. But my boyfriend at the time. This is a guy who came home with me and met my parents. My mom worked at the university, and so we'd go by her office, and everyone knew he was out, but obviously no one knew that I was gay. So I share that because the journey that I know that boy took from that time to now. There's no roadmap for it. There's no one to walk you down that path. It is yours to live alone with the support of allies and of others all around you. I like to say that there's no gay wizard there's Ian McKellen, okay? And that's the closest thing we've got. And Ian McKellen himself said that personally for him coming out was one of the most important things he ever did. Lifting from my shoulders the millstone of lies that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. That to me says that there's so much more in coming out than just going around and telling people or having to tell people every time you enter a new situation. It's about the freedom that you now have to claim it's about the freedom that you now have to live openly and to shed that fear and that anxiety that may have held you back. And I say that acknowledging 100% that fear and anxiety is real, and it's rooted in systems and norms that we all still push back against. And that's true for everyone, not just LGBTQ folks, but everyone is being given messages and told things every single day about who you should be, about how you should live, about who you should love, and about what your life should look like. And we internalize those messages. But the freedom that comes with coming out and living your authentic self means the freedom to choose, the freedom to make the choice, to claim for yourself your identity. If you know who Harvey Fierstein is, I practiced the past couple of days my Harvey Fierstein impression. It is not ready for public consumption, so I'm not going to do that today. If you get a chance to go to YouTube, watch his 1983 interview with Barbara Walters. It's fantastic. But he said, never allow yourself to be made a victim. Accept no one's definition of your life. Define yourself. And so the freedom that comes with coming out is the freedom to choose that power. We can choose to allow others to define our identity and to build that closet or that place that we hide in, or we can define our identity on our own terms. And in that way, coming out becomes an act of reclaiming that power over your own narrative. And it's not just a personal journey. Something happens when more and more of us are willing to reclaim that power, to take up that space, to boost that visibility of us living our authentic selves. We create hope for others, and we make room for others to hope. I reflect on this a lot when I think about 2000 and whatever that year was, and before 2015, when I thought about my future, when I thought about the life that I wanted to live and what society told me the life that I was going to live would look like, I always tell people I couldn't ever imagine my wedding. I felt like that was something you should be able to see. You should be able to envision. I should be able to envision getting married in the way that everyone else talks about that. And I couldn't. And for me, what I realized is, up until 2015, when, marriage equality was ruled on at the Supreme Court, there wasn't this idea that I could marry who I wanted to marry, that would be recognized in this place that I call home. And that takes away our hope. That makes us question whether or not there is a positive future for us. And that's real. But for me, for him, there were so many people that came before who lived their authentic selves, who showed up, who were visible, who fought back. Those people made it possible for myself and so many others to live into their truth, to have the power and the courage that leads to that true societal change. So coming out and the visibility that creates is not only your own personal liberation and freedom, but it creates space for others to live into theirs, building a much more inclusive world. In 2015 and before, I couldn't have imagined that the joy that others experience by loving who they love and having them and creating a family, that was for me. I couldn't even accept that. But because other people came before and made a difference in living their true selves, I was able to do that and have the courage as well. A Harvey Milk quote that I wanted to share in relation to all this was, "How can people change their minds about us if they don't know who we are?" How can people change their minds about us if they don't know who we are? And so I want to encourage you to support those who are in the closet, to support those who are coming out. If you are out and proud, then I celebrate you and I value you. Because what really gives me hope is that the generation, the next generation is one of the generation that is much more likely to identify openly as something other than the hetero norm that we've seen for decades. That gives me hope about the future. And so the future that this guy couldn't necessarily imagine is that one day he would have a partner, that he would be welcomed into his family, that joy of living as who you are supposed to be can be experienced. And then you can live the rest of your life trying to make space and create opportunities for other people to do the same. And so I want to encourage you to think about coming out as a freedom to claim, as a freedom to live openly, a power to define your own narrative, and the ability to have hope and give hope to others. So I want to thank you for allowing me to come back to this and talk again. And I'm excited that it seems like every year, there's more and more people here, which to me speaks volumes to the community that we have here, the support, and the dedication to all of this. So thank you very much.
Well, that's going to be a tough one to follow. Right. For those who don't know me, my name is Levi Daniels. I am a junior, and I am the president of Pride Inclusivity Network. I always knew that I was different. I felt more comfortable playing with Pokemon rather than Barbies, Hot Wheels rather than Disney princesses. And one of my first best friends was a boy. It wasn't until middle school that I found out what transgender meant. It was both terrifying and exciting. I never really liked to talk about how I was feeling in fear of how people, like my family, would react. I suppressed my feelings of being confused about my gender and sexuality until my sophomore year of high school. There was a GSA, Gay Straight Alliance, and I felt comfortable coming out. However, it wasn't until senior year until I realized and finally accepted that I was a boy. My school was unfortunately not very helpful with my transition. When I said that I wanted to change my name in the system, they wouldn't let me because I was too close to the end of the year. Unfortunately, many people whom I used to call my friends found out about me wanting to change my name, and I was bullied. I remember explaining to my college counselor that I was changing my name, and she was able to help me do that for applications. It was a small step, but it meant so much to me. Flashing forward to about 2 years ago, I finally subtly came out as a trans man to my parents, simply by having my sibling refer to me with just he/him pronouns. I was fortunate enough to get top surgery in December 2022 and start testosterone around the same time, and it was the best decision of my life. Even though I have gotten far in my transition, I am still affected by the recent attacks on trans lives. I am a brother, a grandson, a nephew, a son, and a future teacher. But first, I am human.
Alrighty. Well, thank you, Levi. I wish that my story was quite as, inspiring as that, but nowhere near as grandiose. For those of you that don't know me in the room, my name is Colin Rensel. I dip my hand in a little bit of too many things, so I won't run down that list. But I'll start this out in a way that's probably very familiar to a lot of people. I grew up in a really religious household, really religious family. Furthermore, a Catholic family. And that gave me not the greatest start when it came to trying to understand myself. And I remember being really young and talking to my mom about certain concepts and different things. And I remember looking at her and I said, "Do you ever have to tell yourself that you don't like girls?" Because I have to tell myself I don't like boys all the time. And she just kind of looked at me. And I don't know if her heart broke or shimmered in that moment, but she was like, "Let's talk about this when you're a little bit older." And we did. We came back to it when I was a little bit older, and I knew a little bit more about the world. And I was like, "You never had to tell yourself that you're not gay. Not even once, not even a little bit." And she looked at me and she's like, "No, never. Is this a common thing for you?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's a pretty normal occurrence." And so I started going to a therapist, because, that's what happens. And he helped me actualize and realize the person that I was inside. And so I came out to my parents with a lot of fear because, here they are. "Really? You do that?" And I was fortunate that I got met with love. I know that doesn't happen for a lot of people, but they took "Love Thy Neighbor" and, they love me for who I am. It wasn't the same for a lot of my friends. I lost a lot of people. I kind of got shunned out of my church. Lost my religion in the process. Found a different one, but I also found who I am, and I wouldn't go back and change that for the world. Here I am now. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jackson Wenberg. I'm a first-year nursing student, and this is a coming-of-age story I wrote for English Comp. I labeled it "How Samantha Became Jackson." I was always labeled a tomboy as a child. I didn't like stereotypical girls' clothes. I despised dresses, skirts, and anything frilly. I always wore stereotypical boys' clothes and only shopped in the boys' section. Once I hit first grade, I chopped my long hair off, and from then on, I would rock a bowl cut. I hung around mainly boys and played boys-dominated sports. In elementary school, I was one of the boys. When we had gym class, we were sat on two lines separated by our gender. I remember feeling lonely and confused to be separated by my boy friends, even if it was just for attendance. My friends would regularly tell me to just go sit with them, grabbing my legs and jokingly pulling me to the boys' side. It felt wrong to be categorized as a girl when that's not how I felt inside. At the time, transgenderism was not in the news, nor was anyone talking about it publicly. I had, however, heard about sex changes. My 9th birthday was coming up, and I knew what I wanted. I was going to ask for a sex change. Now, as an almost 9-year-old, obviously, I had no idea what the hell I was talking about. But what I did know was that it felt more comfortable being addressed as a boy than a girl. I articulated a note to my mother telling her exactly that. I wanted a sex change for my 9th birthday. With the utmost courage, I slid this note onto her side table and waited for a response. She said, "Sam, you can't get a sex change at 9 years old. We can come back to this conversation when you're older, 16. This didn't bother me until I hit puberty. I was only 10 years old when I started puberty. I remember the awful feeling of putting on a tight shirt and seeing my blossoming breasts, the urge to rip the shirt and my skin off with it. I refused to wear bras. Bras were enemy number one in my mind. Even when my mother and brother were urging me to try training bras, I refused. The thought alone made me sob. The fact that my chest would never be flat again ruined me. When I finally buckled and started wearing bras, it was only sports bras. I felt like I was in a straitjacket. I didn't want these breasts, nor did I want to be constrained because of them. And then the inevitable happened and I got my first period. It wasn't until I was 12 years old and was gifted a phone that I discovered what being transgender meant. I downloaded the popular app Musical.ly, now TikTok, and found that there were teenagers who were transitioning. I felt connected to them in a way that was confusing and confirming. I battled with my brain for weeks. Am I transgender? I didn't know what to do. The term felt right, but it was all so new and overwhelming. One night I decided I need to talk to someone, to tell someone that I think I'm transgender. But once I wrote the text, I got anxious. This would change the rest of my life, how people view me, how society would view me. I deleted it and went back to bed sobbing. I couldn't take it anymore. The constant crying, the urge to cut off my chest with scissors and be done with it. Finally, one night, mid-sob, I gathered my courage and I texted my bisexual friend, Leandra. She was incredibly helpful and supportive. She even helped me pick the first name I went by, Alex. That same night, I wrote my mom another letter, explaining to her that I was questioning my gender and sexuality, and the next morning I put it in her car to find before leaving for work. I went to school as normal, bottling up the confusing feelings I was experiencing, and when I arrived home, I talked to my mother. She was nothing short of supportive, but concerned about how my life would be different and how others would react. My mother was scared for me, and while I was scared too, I was ready to start living my life authentically. That same night, I wrote her one last letter. Mom, I am coming out as your bisexual son. I am transgender, and my name from now on would be Alexander Sam Wenberg. That did not stick. On this note, I put a little drawing of me, her son, smiling. I put this note under her coffee cup the next morning for her to find before work. I went to school and came out to my friends and peers. Leandra was with me all day, supporting me on my journey of coming out as Alex. It felt like there was a weight leaving my chest. From then on, I would be her third son and not her first daughter. Almost immediately, my mother purchased a chest binder for me, a piece of clothing that flattened my chest to replicate a man's chest. I cried tears of joy knowing that I could look down and not have to see breasts. The anxiety that came with developing started to fade. My skin didn't feel like it was crawling with bugs for the first time since beginning puberty. I was finally comfortable in my body again. Thinking back to younger me, it makes sense that I came out as transgender. But when you yourself are in that situation, it's horrifying. My life would be different in every way. How would I know if my mother would support me in my transition? How would my peers and the adults around me react? But after being out and proud as a transgender man for 8 years, I have never felt more confident in my body or my identity. Looking in the mirror used to be painful. Seeing a little girl with soft features caused me to avoid mirrors. That wasn't me looking back. But now I look in every mirror I walk by, finally seeing me, a confident young man with harder features, shitty facial hair, and a receding hairline. Now I can look back at my experiences as a young girl and smile knowing she would soon become he. Thank you.
Not gonna lie, that got me kind of emotional. Wow. I just want to say, thank you all for being here. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. I'm so much more emotional about this than I thought I was gonna be. It's just really, really encouraging to come back and see that things are continuing to grow. And yeah, anyway. So when I first came to Pitt-Bradford in 2017, I was presented with an opportunity that I don't think many people get, which is the chance to show up to a new place where no one knows you. You are miles and miles away from home, and you can be whoever you want to be. And so there were a few weeks just before I arrived at Pitt where I had top surgery. So I was fresh, tape still on my chest. I'd come here. I'd been on testosterone already for a couple years. I had my name changed. There were few physical traces left of this young lady that I was thought to be in the past in DC. I was perfectly positioned to show up as the regular normal dude. And so as I thought about whether or not I wanted to be out on campus, there were a lot of questions that came to mind, especially given the area, right? I had this perception of rural America as being a place where queer people did not exist, queer people were not welcome, and being both black and queer, those combined identities felt like really bad ones to have in this space. And so I talked to friends about it. I talked to family. And one of my friends was like, yeah, dude, I don't know. Trump just got elected. You're black, you're queer, you're disabled. Do you really need to add on another marginalized identity that you don't necessarily have to share? And so after having that conversation, it kind of became clear to me that I had to be out. Not just because I couldn't imagine a life where I wasn't out, but also because I knew that it would have impact beyond just my own experience. When I shared my decision with my parents before I came to college that I was going to be out, they were very confused and really wary, and so was I, granted. They asked me this question, which was, what was the point of us rushing to get you on testosterone and have top surgery and go through the process of getting a name change if you were just going to come out to everyone anyway? Like, why would you do that? And it kind of occurred to me that they didn't really understand the point of coming out. It's not for other people. It's not for other people to accept us and do these things for us. It's for us. To them, coming out meant like hiding something or tucking something away. But for me, it was about finding comfort in my own body, being able to show up authentically. It was shedding this fear, this discomfort that kept me inside, that made me not go out with friends, that made me wear baggy clothes that hid my entire body because I didn't want to be perceived. And so after explaining this to them, I think they finally kind of got it. But again, they were still really, really nervous. And so was I. I mean, going to college 6 hours away from home and several hundred miles away is scary regardless of your identity, right? And I was going to be living in a house full of cis men for the first time ever, which, like, holy crap. I mean, well, never mind. I won't get into that. I mean, but like the state of our bathroom, the number of times that I fell into the toilet, horrible, horrible. Anyway, when I finally met my 4 other housemates, we were crammed into one of the little houses over there in Stein. I was kind of nervous about talking to them about being trans, but I knew it was going to have to be a part of the conversation, especially with my roommate, given that I'd be changing in front of him sometimes, that we would definitely be having these kinds of encounters. And his first statement to me was, "Oh, crap. Why'd you tell me that? I didn't need to know. I would have just thought you were a normal dude and that you had some weird stuff happening on your chest." But it was important for me to talk about it. And then he told me, "Oh, well, I'm Mormon, never met really any other queer people. Let's just talk about it." And the same was true for all of my other housemates. Most of them had never met a trans person or even a queer person, but we had some really interesting conversations, and I was surprised that there was no sense of awkwardness. There was no invasive questions. There was no sense of rejection that I felt when I was talking to them. And at that moment, it made me realize, like, oh wait, maybe I've misjudged this place. Maybe I've come in with perceptions that are framing the way that I'm showing up and making me more afraid than I needed to be. And so I need to be open. I needed to be curious the same way that I wanted people to be curious about me. And so as I went in to Pitt-Bradford and became enmeshed in the community and met out faculty like Dr. D and also started working in housing, I realized that there was a lot more acceptance and love here than I thought. That people were much more interested in learning and also having you be curious about them, and they'll return that curiosity because everyone wants connection. Everyone wants the best possible outcome for our conversations in our communities. And then I found Pride Alliance. Tyler Morris is in the back there, and I can't tell you about the impact that Tyler had because it's still hitting me today. Finding someone who was not only willing to be out and to lead and to set the foundation for what had to be scary in a place where you're a minority, it's not easy to do. But Tyler did it with strong leadership, with confidence, was willing to stand up when people were trying to deny Pride Alliance the things that we deserved. And I learned a lot under his leadership. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But meeting Pride Alliance, I found people who shared a lot of my identities. And there were some people who didn't really understand what it meant to be trans, but were willing to learn, and so we talked more about that. And then I met people outside of Pride Alliance who had no relationships with queer people, had no idea what it meant to be trans, but were curious enough to ask questions, were kind enough to get to know me first outside of my trans identity. And I think those relationships were the ones that surprised me the most. coming back from like fall break or from holiday breaks, they would say, hey, I brought this stuff up at the dinner table. I talked to my family about having a trans friend and realizing that my parents had no actual understanding of what it meant to be trans, that their only perception was what was on Fox News. And being able to challenge them and ask them questions about why they believed what they believed. And I don't know, it just made me feel like, oh, me being out wasn't just, again, about me and the people that I was talking to on campus or interacting with on campus, but it was about the people that they were interacting with when they went home and when they went back to their hometowns and so on and so forth. And so I guess what I'm really trying to get at here is that, like, coming out was worth it for me, not just because it allowed me to live my life authentically, but as Michael said, that, like, coming out also gave other people the opportunity to learn and to maybe feel more confident coming out for themselves. And it also provided just a deeper opportunity for connection and for vulnerability and showing up vulnerable in spaces, leading with that, created a room for challenging misconceptions and addressing bias and really just starting to see each other as people. As you all know, maybe you don't know, but you're about to find out, I'm a big nerd. And so I'll give you some quick data points that I feel like are important. Research from Data for Progress in 2023 found that personally knowing a trans person would significantly increase a person's likelihood of supporting the trans people, supporting trans rights, and supporting the LGBT community overall. And that's across political party. It didn't matter what party you were from. Knowing someone mattered. And so that, again, to me, pointed out the importance of being out. It's not just about sharing your story, but just the very thought of being out, just the very question of how does my vote, how do my actions, how do my behaviors, how do the things I support impact the people that I love in my life, can kind of change the narrative and change the pace of where we're going politically. And we're in a big election year. This is not, I know that we can't do too much about politics here right now, but I will say that even if you're not going to get someone to change their mind about their entire political identity, you can get people to support trans people. You can get people to support trans rights and queer rights in general. It doesn't have to be this conversation where you're forcing this, like, grand narrative of the world needs to abolish gender today. Like, that's not where we have to be to get things to be better. I saw a documentary recently called Will and Harper. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. It's on Netflix. It's great. I'll give you the quick synopsis. It's just like a beautiful story with Will Ferrell and his best friend, Harper Steele, taking a road trip across the U.S., going to a bunch of places where Harper usually would have gone before she transitioned. And these were like grimy places, kind of places that I love. The dive bar with the crusty vibe, and you kind of look like you might get hate crimed if you go in, but like there are cool people in there and you want to experience it. And they were doing this road trip so that Harper could get the experience of going back into these places as a trans woman and figuring out what does safety look like again. And what they found in some places was that, yeah, some people are going to be a little surprised that you exist. And they're going to be like, what are you doing here? You don't belong. But after a while, when you start the conversation and, again, express curiosity about them and who they are, they're going to express that curiosity right back. Some ignorant things might come out of their mouths. But you can work through that, right? And so, I don't know. I think about that experience, and I think about the experience that I've had with my friend Ty here. We've been all around this country, going to random places like the Bradfords and the Oleans and the Smethports and Countersports of the world, and being ourselves authentically, because I don't know, I think we're quite visibly queer sometimes, and if not quite visibly queer, then definitely visibly Black. But that hasn't stopped us from building connections and relationships in places where we thought we would never be able to do it. And so, I guess I'll just leave with this. The homie, MLK, said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We have to remember that all of us are connected here, that when one of our rights are threatened, that all of our rights are threatened. This reproductive health issue that we've been seeing, it's impacting everyone. The things that are hurting trans people now are not going to just hurt trans people in the future. And we have to be able to stand up and say, hey, look, we may not agree on this. We may not agree on this, but we agree that people deserve healthcare. People deserve to be safe. People deserve to have their documents have the right name on it and have the right gender marker. And I think that those conversations can start from something as simple as watching a documentary like Will and Harper, which is not super politically like boom, boom, boom. It's very like, chill, this is the thing, you know, like we're just vibing out here. It's a great place to start conversations. And I really implore all of us to try to have these conversations, even if you're not queer, because it can start with you. So yeah, that's it. Thanks so much for having me, by the way. Yeah.